Okay, so this is just a video to really talk about, would say, how non-nationals and even Irish people have been trained, their minds have been trained to dismantle Irish identity. And this dismantling is a kind of a modern thing. It would have never happened when I was growing up, maybe, you know, even 30 years ago, 20 years ago. That you would never attack Irish identity in this way. It's only a current phenomena. And I believe it came about simply as a result of postmodern thinking, which postmodernism became very big in the 1960s and onwards. And it came from the whole school of thought that everything is subjective and not objective. And so it's the deconstruction of reality. But straight into the thing to do with Irish identity, what I want to talk about is how over the years, last 3-4 years, how I've been attacked by people and had my identity as an Irish person dismantled. And that dismantling takes place so there's many different arguments that you get presented with. And one of the arguments, I'll start with this one, which is, didn't the Irish go everywhere? So in other words, the Irish don't have a right to their own homeland. And so by that very thinking, like they say that the Irish went to America because, so in that regards, then we should allow people to come here. So really what you're saying is, you're saying that the Irish went everywhere, and so that everywhere should come here. That makes no sense whatsoever. Our systems are failing at the moment from the masses of people that have already come in. So if you want to talk about America, America was a wide open country. It wasn't a nation state at the time, whereas now, currently, in the current day, Ireland is a nation state. In those days, America didn't have any social welfare system. Irish has a very large social welfare system. So America, huge, no social welfare system, no social protection. Ireland, huge social welfare protection system, but very small country. So you see, juxtaposed. Doesn't make any sense, okay? So, all right, so let's say, and then there were places like in England back in the 60s and 70s whereby they took on Irish workers. And my argument would be that people say, oh, well, didn't Irish go to England as well? Yes, they did. But I'll also make the argument that they didn't leave. A lot of them stayed there. And they became alcoholics on the streets of London, and on the streets of English towns and streets. They became alcoholics because they had no sense of place. They had no identity in that country. So you know, you're arguing for what I'm arguing for if you go along those lines and argue that point. Also too, the idea of bringing in workers for a temporary amount of time should only be temporary for a country, not permanent. That makes no sense whatsoever. So that's that argument. The other argument is also is that the Irish don't have a culture. You know, we just, all we have is GAA and drinking. You know, that's it. We don't even have our own language. Well, so I'm going to argue against that now. And what I say is that dancing, sport, etc., music, they're only the cosmetic aspects of a culture. Like, the way I can talk to another Irish person and understand all their gestures, understand their small tones, understand the language, understand the use of English language that only Irish people have created as a result of coming from the Irish language into English. The very fact that I can understand that from another Irish person is Irish culture. That is the culture. You know, the intonations, the twist of the face, the eyes, is all Irish culture. If I say to another Irish person, I say, soft day, thank God, and most non-nationals, foreign people, won't even know what that means. You know, that's something we grew up with. That was Irish culture. Also, too, people talk about, we say, the Irish traditional food being very boring, and I would argue you eat food not to be exciting. You know, you eat food to survive. So food like stew and food like bacon and cabbage. You know, whereas I actually think is very tasty. But they're the most healthiest food types, dinner types you can eat, like for surviving and for being healthy. You know, you have your meat group, you have your root group, and you have your green leaf group in bacon and cabbage. It's magnificent. You couldn't ask for better. And when I cook that now, I just cook with, say, bare potatoes for mashed potatoes, and then I have boil up a hock of bacon. And then I actually put my leaf of cabbage in around that, and that's the dinner when it's all done. Dry it out and just strain it, and it's done. And so you get your root, you get your meat, and you get your green leaf. I mean, that's Irish culture as well, and those are delicious foods. Stew's the same. There are many different variations on these types around the country. You have boxty, you have colcannon, you have mashed potatoes mixed with some people put onions with it. You know, so like the argument that there is no Irish culture is absolutely ridiculous. You know, so those are the two that come to mind first off. Anyway, and I've well, three really when you consider two. You know, that people say that we don't speak our own language. Well, what we do is we actually speak our own language in another language. We actually speak Irish English. Well, at least my parents' generation did, and I did to some degree as well. So. You know, it's like you can't let people dismantle who you are. You know, like to say that. And another thing, and here's the other one as well. They say that what's an Irish person? You know, they try to dismantle your very identity by saying, what's an Irish person? What is an Irish person anyway? Does it really exist? That's the one I've often heard said as well. Well, of course it exists. Of course an Irish person exists. You know, they'll give you the argument that, oh, well, you know, like you're made up of Vikings and Normans and the English and the Celts and the Gaelics and all that. So there is no such thing as a real Irish person. But then every race and ethnicity is made up of different mixes that have gone on to actually make who they are right now. We don't live as interdimensional beings across a timeline. We live now. You know, who we are now is what it's about. This is an Irish person who is a mix of all of those things, which is what makes me Irish. You can say the same thing about any ethnicity or tribe or people around the world. They had many different mixes that made up them as well. You see? So this is an argument that they've been using. This is why I say like postmodern thinking, which is used to dismantle reality and break down reality. So that there is no reality and you have no leg to stand on when it comes to the defense of your own country, defense of your own identity. You see? So I usually turn the argument on the other person. I say, okay, so you're saying that there's no such thing as an Irish person because we're made up of all these different previous invasions. Well, I would argue that a person from the Congo is not made up of those previous invasions. They're not made up of Vikings, they're not made up of Normans, they're not made up of English, they're not made up of Gaelic and Celt, you know? Neither is a Chinese person. They're not made up of Viking, they're not made up of Norman, so they're not Irish. Do you see? So an Irish person, that is their mix. And Chinese will have all of their previous influences as well, ethnic and racial, genetic mixes as well. So the Irish person, people in the current timeline, which is right now, right today, is that admixture of ethnicities and genetics. So there's three main arguments that I'm sure I can come up with more later, but they're the three main ones I can think of right now, which is how Irish identity is usually attacked. So use those in defense whenever anybody tries to dismantle your Irish identity in the future. Thank you.